Alright, fair warning, this game is going to look like ass because I recorded it directly from the Nintendo 64, and I'm not going to use an emulator. It says we can pick which suit we want before we start, but all of the suits are going to be procure on site except for the standard one. For all the effort the game puts in trying to maintain the tone and story of the movie, it's kind of hilarious that Bruce is like, yeah, no, go ahead, Terry, just bust open some boxes. As I said, we're taking a procure-on-site approach to the extra suits this game offers, and we got the defense suit right away, which is really good for us, because the defense suit is pretty necessary. Most of the game's story is told through listening in on conversations from the next room, which is actually kind of a neat detail. It's unorthodox, but it's kind of cool that you get the details about what's happening from the goons you're fighting instead of from cutscenes, because, well, you're fighting so many of them, they may as well say something. And don't worry, Bruce, we'll just knock him out. He's fine, I'm sure. We can charge up these nunchucks by holding down the left C stick, which is the special button. The further we charge them down, the more damage they do. Using them without charging them does almost no damage. I'm sorry, I guess it's the left C button, not the left C stick. What suits drop is randomly decided, so we could have gotten either the offensive or nimble suit there, but we got the nimble suit, which we don't really need right now. The enemies with the jester hats on their head tend to jump back away from your attacks, so using the nunchucks on them can be difficult unless you get really up in their face. And these robots are super deadly unless you kill them as soon as they land. Then they're not so much. And we do have basic punches and kicks, but there's really no reason to use those. At least not yet. A lot of times getting a keycard is the only way to progress, but the enemies always have a keycard, so it's not like a non-linear mechanic or anything. So right up in here is our first mini-boss, and it's kinda cool. There's this guy operating a crane with all kinds of construction equipment, and we need to come over right next to him to hurt him. In order to avoid getting hit ourselves, we need to put up our block. We still take damage, but believe me, if we were using the standard or nimble suit, when we took that damage, we would have been hit a lot harder. Same if we weren't blocking. Using the defensive suit is almost mandatory for some of the boss battles, believe me. And here's that robot earlier that we destroyed too quickly. He has two guns, one for each hand, and they actually deal quite a large amount of damage, which is why I recommend always having the defensive suit ready when you fight him. There is a split path here. We could have either gone the upper or lower route, but we went the upper route because it's faster and a lot less frustrating. There are other methods to deal with those robot enemies if you don't have the defensive suit, such as using the nunchucks, or going full offensive if you have the offensive suit. The issue is that they have a charged blast that will completely wreck you, take out over 40 of your life points, unless you block it. And you can't really block while you're using the nunchuck. You can only block while you're using the Dark Knight staff, which is useless otherwise. So you better hope you have the defensive suit, is what I'm saying. Even when you aren't blocking while you have the defensive suit, you take way less damage in general. The robots also hover into the air and then land back down in an attempt to get around you and potentially confuse you. But if you pay attention to where they're landing at, you can usually get a cheap shot in. Alright, that didn't go as I planned. This construction bot, as you might be able to guess, has an immense amount of range. But that's okay, because we can hit him from behind if he gets too tough to deal with. We have to remember that our nunchuck has almost as much range as his fists do. And if we use that to our advantage, he's much easier. Here's Bonk, our first boss. He has a couple of attacks. He has a wind-up punch that we can't block, but trying to block it still makes us take less damage. He also has a couple of shockwave moves. But unfortunately for him, the elbow jab that we can do in our defensive suit seems to be his weakness.